things for you, and this is maybe why, if you can get Al Horford to take a meeting, and come in the door, he would be it'd be a little bit odd because he's 33, so he's an older player and not necessarily in line with what the Nets are doing right now, building a young core. But I just think of how much could Jared Allen be learning from an Al Horford. Because Al Horford has all the tools across the board, but you also don't look at him as being a dominant from a physical standpoint. And I think actually you talked about this when they were playing the 76ers, if I'm not mistaken, against Joel Embiid, how Horford just mentally, from experience, was able to beat up Embiid and really control Embiid at a lot of points. And then that perfect example would be when you watch the Sixers against the Nets in the playoffs. Even a bit of a broken down Embiid, when he was healthy on the court, he was destroying them with consistency. So I think finding someone that allows Jared Allen to excel at what he's good at without necessarily having the same pressure of picking up that big man underneath the basket is probably going to be... I'll make the argument that that's the bigger need for them right now, because you can sign DAngelo Russell back and target a big man, and all of a sudden you've reshaped what that team looks like defensively, and that's going to impact, I think, so many other players that you still are going to have on this roster, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the reason Horford opts out is because, well, for a couple of reasons. I think he maybe sees the writing on the Celtics wall as not being there. He's coming off a postseason that really showed him to be one of the most dynamic pieces on a team that probably could end up contending for a championship, because he went from guarding Embiid at times, or almost predominantly in that series, he's able to guard Embiid. They didn't play him in that series. He's able to guard Embiid in kind of a one-on-one matchup, but he's also able to guard guys like Giannis, which he was tasked a lot with doing when they played at the Bucks. So the fact that he can sort of switch between those two kinds of players on defense, even at the age 33, is really, you're not going to find that too many other places. It's just so rare to be able to get a guy that's that good on defense. Now, because if you look at size, he and Jared Allen are similarly sized. No one's going to confuse the two guys when it comes to their defense and what they do on the court. Horford can play stretch and can kind of crush you in sort of these pick and pop 3-pointers that he gets a lot with the Celtics. Jared Allen doesn't do any of that. Maybe one day he will. He's not anywhere close to that right now. He's very young. He's only 21, so there's room for improvement there. The current NBA doesn't reward you for being an offense-first big man really at this point. The true guys that can get down on the post and bang and have great games like that, they aren't. There's a reason you didn't see those guys doing a ton in the final couple series in the playoffs, because that's not really what the NBA rewards. Guys like Embiid are transcendent on defense, so it's a little bit different. So I guess, would you be willing to take a guy like Vucevic from the Magic, or Boogie Cousins, we can talk about him, who are sort of offense-first bigs? They would be better on defense than what you get with Jared Allen. They're not transcendent defenders by any means. They're offensive first. Would that be good enough to sort of fill the need to maybe trade off whatever you're not getting on defense for a little bit more offense and not just rim run like Jared Allen does right now? Because these are the kind of centers that you might be talking about signing outside of guys like Al Horford. And I just don't know if you think that is what fills the need enough. Can you trade off the defense part for just having a guy that can actually punish you on offense as well? This is a fine line here. I'm not exactly sure if there's a completely right answer.
Yeah, and I guess, the three-pointer being so much more important in the NBA right now, and Al Horford has the range to shoot the three-pointer. So does Boogie Cousins. And any of these guys, any of these bigs can have the skill set to do that. I don't know if the value that you get offensively, can you find that from other places, and how much are you going to feed a guy underneath or allow him to bang? Like you said, unless you're someone like an Embiid who is transcendent defensively, and therefore you end up molding a little bit of your offensive plans around a guy like that. So it's a little weird, and it's an odd spot to be in, especially given the guys that are out there. You mentioned Boogie Cousins, and he's a guy who it's almost like that the Kyrie Irving syndrome. Pre getting injured and going to Golden State, Boogie Cousins, my opinion of him was always man, super talented, but he's a head case. Whatever his thought process was about what he didn't or didn't want to do, or just always seeing the visual of him being oh, What did you not do right on that play? Or I was fouled on this play. I didn't see that. You didn't do this. He doesn't strike me as a very team player kind of guy. And I think the only reason why it looks like he's turned over a new leaf when it comes to Golden State is because you're surrounded by guys that are, on your level or better than you, and have done more than you and have proved more than you. So it's a lot easier for a team like Golden State with those players around him to be like, yeah, you're going to come in and you're going to play the role with us, and we're going to kind of control you in that way. And it's going to be good for you and good for your game. But all of a sudden you bring him into a younger team, let's say with a DAngelo Russell, I don't like the dynamic that gets created there, where, again, a guy like Al Horford just seems like he's the, true professional, veteran presence, and is going to be about the team and is going to be about, filling the role that he knows he's there to, to be performing. It's not going to be the Al Horford show, So the concern, I guess, that I have is Al Horford, because of that playoff, what he showed in the playoffs, he's still going to be in demand around the league. And I'm sure there's going to be other teams that are going to be looking for him. And like you said, it's not like Brooklyn is listed in the top 1 or 2 or even maybe 3 spots that is on his short list in the, short time that he's now officially going to be on the free agent market. So I don't know where the Nets might look to commit that. And you could maybe speak more to Vucevic. I'm sure I'm saying the name wrong because I haven't seen enough of him to say what he would be on the team. And I think, you know what I mean? Like, Al Horford is a guy that's been around for so long. I feel like I know what he is. I've seen him play. Boogie Cousins, same kind of thing. I have an inclination on him. But I don't know about Vucevic and what he would look like in this system on this roster. Do you have a sense of what that would look like if you plugged him in?
Yeah, I do. I think, can I take 2 seconds to rewind the Boogie real quick? Because I want to make one Boogie point here. I think that Boogie is very interesting to me because I think that either a team is going to get the deal of the century on a guy like Cousins this offseason if he doesn't, like if his market gets depressed a little bit, like maybe he just didn't show enough in the playoffs. People are still a little bit worried about the injury. I think there's a chance where some team could just hit an absolute home run with a sort of a long-termish contract that didn't come in at max money for a guy like him and just taking the risk on what you can get going forward. I could see the Nets making a play like that and being like, this is like sort of the risk worth taking. And I could see a franchise doing something similar and it just being the worst decision they ever made. This is how far apart I find myself on Cousins right now, because he is simultaneously awesome and was bordering on transcendent-ish talent when he was fully healthy. He's 28 years old, coming off basically the worst injury you can have, which is the Achilles. And so, but he's also, if you thought you saw enough from him in the playoffs, like he was like, oh, he just wasn't in shape, but everything else was kind of there. It was just kind of a game condition piece, which was really makes a lot of sense coming back from this injury in December and then getting re-injured. There's a world where he signs an undervalued long-term 4-year contract, let's say, with a team like the Nets, and I'm like, man, I could talk myself into that because you could get to end of year 2 and he's fully healthy and his attitude's been totally changed because he's been on 2 sort of okay-ish teams between the Pelicans and now the Warriors that he's seen enough of professionalism outside of the dumpster fire that the Kings were when he was there. I think that there's a chance a new Leaf Boogie could be. I could be just like the steal of the century that you could kind of build around, and he could just get re-injured and never kind of come fully back. So I think it's great. It's crazy. I'm pretty risk. When I'm looking at things like this, I sometimes just want to take the risk on, like, for a team to say, look, we open up some cap space, and this is just the kind of risk you take. I kind of feel the same way about Durant, by the way.
Right.
I would just, if I was the Nets, I would just offer him the contract and just say, oh, we could get Kevin Durant 2 years from now, and he could be back, and we'll pair him with someone else, and he was willing to take it. I would 100%. I said that in the last podcast. I would 100% do it. Boogie is in the next tier down from guys like that. I wouldn't want to max contract him, but if I could get him. By the way, he's coming off like a minimum contract with the Warriors, and I do not think the market's going to totally be there for them. In terms of Vooch, well, I just say Vooch because I always get confused on this name too, because I get turned around on the syllables and where to put the emphasis. He is he's an offensive first center. He's coming off easily his best season. He's actually funny. He and Boogie are the same age. They're both 28 years old right now. Their
That's
careers
what I saw too, yeah.
their career arcs are wildly different. He increased the three-point offerings over the last 2 seasons where he had never really shot three-pointers, and then he kind of boosted it up to right around 3 a game, and he's adequate. 36. If you're getting 33-ish% shooting out of a guy like him, then you would take that all day long. He's not going to world beat for you on defense, but he's good enough to sort of speed bump some of the other big guys, and sometimes that's all you need to be able to do. If you can speed bump a guy like Embiid, then you're probably just winning. And if you can stretch a guy like him out onto the perimeter, you are just dynamic enough. He's a guy I would probably sign too. I'm a little worried that it's kind of coming a little late for him in terms of the overall sort of breakout season. 28 years old is good. Again, this was easily his best season. They ran a really good system in Orlando this year, so he was coached really well after coming off many seasons of just horrendous and really no idea what they were doing on offense kind of thing. And that coaching just is another completely underrated thing in the NBA, which I think the general fan has a hard time conceptualizing how big of a difference a system change will mean, and that he really got that this season. So that would be the part where I think his breakout season is sustainable, is that he was just mired in a system that really didn't know what they wanted to do with him. And he also had some injury issues, like some concussion stuff a couple years ago where he was kind of in and out of games. So I don't know. I wouldn't be pumped up. It's one of those ones like, oh, is this sort of the second offering? This is, the next tier up that you open up some cap space. Do I want to have 4 years of him? I don't think you're going to win a championship with that. And it's not a risk, I don't think. It's a nice signing that it's the girl that you see and you didn't try. You're looking at the 2 girls and you're saying, this one's kind of a little bit out of my league, but I'm going to go for it. This one's going to be the safe play, which I think I'll just get a yes on. I think Vooch kind of strikes me as the latter, and maybe I'll get dug in the comment section for that. But that's kind of where he lands for me. I think that's my general impression of him.
Yeah, and I guess again, when you're looking at an offensive first center, that's kind of the area where I go, okay, and like you said, I guess if he can at least slow down some bigs defensively, then that is a plus for you. To touch back on, because your comments about Boogie Cousins, I think that's interesting too, because my first thought, as you were saying, that maybe the market isn't going to be as strong as it would have been if he hadn't had the injury and everything else. It does make me it makes me think a little bit like DAngelo Russell coming from the Lakers, and it kind of being like we're not so sure what you are at this point. Now, it's different scenarios. Boogie Cousins has been around the league, but if the idea is that you can come into a new system that that is running it well, and like you said, get coached well, and maybe you've had some growth experiences the last couple of spots that you've been, and I think from the money standpoint, again that plays a factor, because if you can afford to get him on, like you said, maybe a little bit of a longer contract that isn't as high on the money, well, then all of a sudden, then you're also saying, and we can upgrade another position on our roster as well. So those things do kind of go, for me, they're always going to go hand in hand with any of these players. And with Vooch, as I'll now put it, when it comes to him, it's the same thing. Is he at 28 finally getting a chance to maybe hit the market, and what kind of contract is he looking for? Because that's one of those scenarios where I don't want to be overpaying for that's a nice signing, but how far does it really move the needle for you? And again, where are you in 2, 3, 4 years down the line when that contract runs out? And this isn't something we're going to touch on, but I wonder, what I do think we are kind of getting to that area is of whatever the market is for the centers and how they would plug in on the Nets roster. Then all of a sudden, I think, do you turn and say, are we looking at our limited draft assets as being, maybe we look there just to get a developmental guy or whatever it is, because we're not going to throw the money here, or we're not going to have a chance on a veteran like Al Horford. So I think those things play dynamics, inside of the organization. So it'll be interesting. And obviously there's dominoes that have to fall for that as we move through free agency.
One thing I'm fully all I fully convinced myself of after this podcast, and I'll do this to myself every once in a while, is like, well, now all I want is DAngelo Russell and Boogie Cousins. Like, I went into this being like, oh my God. And I actually sent this text to my other business partner of my other business. I was like, oh, you know what's going to happen? The idiot Knicks are just going to max Boogie Cousins, and it'll be the biggest mistake they ever made, because they're going to be left out in the cold on all these other guys. And so I went from sending that text, we're just kind of laughing, maniacally laughing about how stupid the Knicks are going to be, to maxing Boogie Cousins, to be like, you know what? I kind of talked myself into Boogie Cousins as like maybe not a max guy, but maybe 4 years of him isn't looking all that bad. So didn't take me long for me to just like start being long-winded about something, and now that's kind of all I can envision happening for the team.
But isn't that weird? It's weird though too, right? Because I mean, technically, the same thing. Like I was like, the Boogie Cousins got a real attitude problem, I've heard. And then you lay out your speech, and I go, maybe not though.